Hello, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Periscope. My name is Frank Lavinia, and you can catch me in all these places, although I tend to hang out most on LinkedIn. So today I realized, today is January 24th, and I realized that 8 years ago, today, I launched Frank's World TV, the YouTube channel. Now, you'll notice in the title, I refer to it as learning from failure. And if you look at the numbers, let me maximize the screen here. My first YouTube video I upload, hold on, 126 views over 7 years. This was a commercial I filmed for an internal Microsoft contest. 172, 47, right? Oops, let's not click on that. Hang on. 38, 23, 17. Let's see. 10. All right, 100, 113. Starting to get a little better now. 429. 429. I thought that had more. Shahed's a good guy. We should do another video. If you're watching Shahed, ping me. Although I think he's out on leave. Let's go. 143. 90. 50. Let's see. That looks like the puppy I have now. 93. 100. 163. Things are getting a little better. 277 views. And this one I had kind of a VIP in the mix. Mary Jo Foley. I should have her back on, but the podcast. 13, 111, 316. That's pretty good. So on and so on. 90, 53. There we go. One of my first viral hits was the Too Many Franks, which was a parody of Too Many Cooks. And I had my Christmas specials. Let's see. Unboxing. This is one of my first, one of my most viewed videos was this here, and I actually forgot about it. So the reason why, first off, I want to say thank you for watching. Second, I can now take my hat off because I have I got a haircut, so no more quarantine view, no more quarantine hair. So I learned a lot of things from this. One of the things I learned was unboxing videos are very popular. In fact, the two most popular videos I have been the unboxing ones. And you'll see I've done a lot of other things since then, trying to do more stuff. But you'll see that the views don't really, on YouTube, haven't really been tremendous. And here I am 8 years into this. It's a stretch to call it a failure. You know what? Maybe it is a failure. And I think part of it is, and one of the things I've learned, and again, this is meant to be positive and talk about learning from failure, is the streams on this. I still don't get great views on YouTube. In fact, my YouTube views are rather pathetic. Now, part of that is in the spirit of extreme ownership. I mean, part of this is me. It's like, I should have studied YouTube better. I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought that the world would eventually come to my door. I kind of had this dream of being the next PewDiePie, I guess. Clearly that didn't happen. And you know what? It's not a bad thing because Let me put this back up on the screen. I learned a lot, right? Just getting this up and running, right? If you look, and I'll play it. I'll mute it. The audio is kind of bad by what I would produce today's standards before I got into podcasting seriously. And I mean, just doing this, I mean, I taught myself how to shoot. I taught myself how to do the compositing with the green screen, some of the fancier editing tricks. I look back at this in some ways and I cringe, but I look back at it in other ways. I remember buying a green screen just to do this. You know, no engagement at all, no comments, no up likes, no down likes. I think I posted the first comment on it today. Like, oh, I cringe. Now, why am I talking about this? Why am I bringing this up? And why am I talking about this? Well, one, YouTube still remains a great medium for people to learn, do training classes and stuff like that. But the algorithm, I think, works against small creators. The algorithm, I don't know. I think ultimately it's about who you're. For me, it was about finding who my audience is and who my audience is. Now, if you contrast this with here, I'll open the kimono and show you the download specs for data driven. You'll see that the the downloads are much better. Obviously, several orders of magnitude better. But that's the point here isn't to name and shame myself. I think part of it is that I learned when I decided to do a podcast. This would have been late 2016. I kind of thought about doing a podcast in 2014, 2015, and calling it the Frank's World podcast. Now, Frank's World itself, wasn't really a good brand at the time. We're talking, 5-6 years ago. So certainly 8 years ago, it wasn't the brand that it is today. If you noticed, I've changed it to Frank's World of Data Science and AI. This definitely, I think, gives it more of a focus. Frank's World's been online since 1995, and one thing it really lacked was focus. There at one point was a prank calls portion of the site. There was a schnauzer portion of the site. It really had no focus. It was, from time to time, it would get a focus and then kind of leave it. Now, so kind of, doing a post-mortem on why was the YouTube channel kind of a disaster is, one, the core brand I didn't build, right? I should have, I didn't. Second, I didn't really take the time to study the algorithm. I took the time to study video production, right? Again, as an engineer, I tend to think in terms of, new shiny. And ultimately, I mean, the numbers prove it, right? So why did data driven do so much better? Well, one, it's not a solo project. Andy Leonard has been a great partner in this process. And two, I didn't focus too much on the production aspects. Many times, we'll record a show in public on a cell phone, right? Because I learned the lesson from the YouTube channel that flashy intros and comments and all that stuff, they don't make views. They also, people come for the thumbnails on YouTube. They come for the titles and stuff, but they stay. What makes them stay is the valuable content. Now, hey, I have a comment. Alberto, how's it going? Hope you're having a good Sunday. Yeah, I guess I was ahead of the times. It's funny you mentioned that, right? So there were, maybe I'll do a longer LinkedIn article on it, but I wanted to mark the occasion because it's still a milestone. I was ahead of time, but I didn't understand marketing. And speaking of being ahead of time, my own division in what was then called developer and platform evangelism, they didn't get it either. The marketing folks were just like, why are you on YouTube? In fact, if you look at the TV, and I showed it to them, and I rushed the first episode to production because we were headed to an offsite 8 years ago. You could actually be in person with folks. And I kind of showed this off to the marketing folks, and she just didn't get it. She's like, I don't get it. Like, particularly this part, when she saw this, she's like, I don't get it. Are you smashing the competitors? Right? No, it was just like a funny image, you know? And the whole thing was just like, she just didn't get it. And my boss at the time, my manager at the time, he didn't get it either. He's kind of like, eh. In fact, I was still doing it at the next time we did an offsite, and he said I was wasting time on it, and that I should get a student to create content for me. To which I replied, "You're going to give me budget?" He goes, "No, you can get a student to work for free." To which I replied, DC is not Los Angeles or New York. There's not a film student on every corner looking to build out their portfolio. That didn't go over very well, and a few months later, I changed roles. But that's a story for another day. Content is always king. That's true. I mean, that is absolutely true. Some of the best, and I was talking to somebody this week at work about this, that my blog posts, I would pour my heart out. Obviously, you can't go back and see them because of a glitch in the matrix, thanks to my database provider, ClearDB, clearing me out. But that is yet again another story for another day. But content is king. Like, you would write these, I would write these long kind of, screeds on development and user interface design, dare I say Silverlight as well. And it would get no views, right? I'd post like a short thing about a short hack about how to, do something with a REST API call, or just some short hack, and put the code up. Boom, that thing blew up, right? So in the sense that what I knew from franksworld.com has gotten pretty good traffic from almost the beginning, like from 1995 on. Last year I got 2.9 million views, page views. The year before that, it was 2.5 million. So, I mean, I've always had, I managed to crack the blog code, right? But it was the YouTube code that I wanted to move into. And, I'm not PewDiePie. Clearly I didn't replace my income with a YouTube channel. So I really learned a lot from this failure, so that when Data Driven came around, when the time came to create this, and Alberto, I see your recent comment, and that dovetails nicely into what I was going to say, is that a visionary needs another visionary as a producer. Absolutely. And I credit the success of Data Driven on my fellow co-host, Andy Leonard, for also being a visionary, for seeing kind of what I saw, and for helping me articulate that in a way that made sense. My push into YouTube made sense to me. Calling it Frank's World TV made sense to me. But clearly at the larger world, I mean, there's no other word to call that. 8 years since, it says 7 years, but it was basically uploaded today. And I mean, there's no way to call that other than an abject failure if it only has 126 views. Now, granted, it's nothing to look at, but still, like, it really did not take the world by storm. Part of it might have been my content. My content was heavily focused on Windows 8 development, and I think we all know how that movie ended. But at the time, I was an enthusiastic evangelist, but I didn't understand marketing. I understood the story, the technical content, but I couldn't phrase it into a story. And you're right, Alberto. Marketing folks need an ROI story, return on investment, even when the assumptions are the source data. I mean, I wish I had more marketing support for this channel, but honestly, at the time, I have to be careful how I phrase this, but at the time, I just don't think people outside of early YouTube adopters really truly understood the power of YouTube. I mean, Microsoft, I don't think, had a YouTube channel at this time, or they had just started it. And a lot of it was, oh, you're using somebody else's platform. Oh, you're using Google as a platform. You have to go where the eyeballs are, or the ears. And as you can see with Data Driven, I've done a lot better. For one, I took the naming of the content much more seriously, right? So if you say Frank's World, right, now I like to think, tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, tell me if I'm right in the comments, that if you say Frank's World in the data science and AI community, my name is out there now. Back in the day, it really wasn't. In the tablet PC days, maybe it was, but the whole notion of calling a YouTube channel Frank's World, well, what does that mean? Like, what is that? That doesn't tell you anything what it's about. So when I came up with the idea of doing a data science focused podcast, for a while, I kind of bounced around the idea of calling it Frank's World. And I kind of looked at my anemic numbers here and was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. So as the story goes, if you're not familiar with the origin story, in September 2016 was just a really bad month. October was a bad month too. But I had a concussion, which basically knocked me out for about 6 weeks. I was seriously, short-term memory was shot. And I remember we went, starting to feel better around Thanksgiving, and we were shopping. We were going to go shopping for Black Friday, which is something we normally don't do anyway. But we got coffee ahead of time. And at the time, I think I was still eating donuts. So I had, had some carbs. So we got donuts at Dunkin' Donuts. And I remember the door. It was the Dunkin' Donuts in Gaithersburg. Maybe one day I'll make it a historic site. And I've done a couple of live shows in front of it. But ultimately, I was looking at the doors, and the doors each had a door handle that was a D, right? And I was like, Dunkin' Donuts. I like alliterations, right? Dunkin' Donuts. They had, that sort of thing. The Sprint was the Now Network. And these are all things that were going through my head. And I was like, it'd be really cool to have a podcast about data, but I need another word. So I'm like thinking, and again, I have my cup of coffee. I'm still in a concussion type of daze. And I remember looking at the thing. I was like, well, I want to come up with a podcast that can kind of talk about the data-driven world that we're living in. And I was like, that's it. Now, I didn't have a pen with me. I didn't have, I should have used the voice recording app, but I was so worried about losing this great name that I repeated data-driven in my head for the next 4 hours until I could get down to a piece of paper and write it out and then check out the domain names. And that's how the show was created. And from that, I also learned my lesson that if I'm going to create a podcast, I'm going to do it right. So I signed up for John Lee Dumas's training on Podcaster's Paradise, took every course on how to set it up, how to market it. Now, do we have billions of impressions? No. But if you look at what I learned from that, one, the name, two, the branding, right? You'll notice data-driven is always fairly consistent with the colors and the schemes and things like that. I credit that all to the John Lee Dumas class. I mean, it really taught me kind of the basics of marketing. And when you're an evangelist, you think you know marketing. And I guess in a sense, you know marketing better than the average developer. But in this noisy world, average doesn't cut it. So for me, that was, 8 years after uploading this, I still have 126 views. I've only started posting content. If you go to Frank's World TV and you look at the more recent videos, the only videos I've been posting really there recently, I've gone back and kind of, improved the thumbnails, just as an experiment. I'm mostly because it's a checkbox, right? Creating content now for YouTube is a checkbox on thanks to Restream, right? Most of my views, they come from LinkedIn and they come from Facebook and a surprising amount from Periscope. So I'm going to be very disappointed when Periscope shuts down later this year. But I mean, if you look at that, so I, for years, would not celebrate, the birthday of Frank's World TV on YouTube because it was really a point of shame. But today I was like, you know what? I've learned from it, right? It's not worth being shameful, Thank you, Alberto. Awesome. I should get that put that on an Instagram page. And I see questions have come in, which I will answer. What's Frank's World for AI in 20 years? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for a site that's been around since 1995, the site has changed focus a number of times, right? One of them was, and I see your question from Mr. Sunjo. Hold up a second. Actually, I'll answer that right now. So thank you for watching again. Thank you for commenting. I did get your request. I will write back to you today, probably later today, because I got some family stuff I got to do on the weekend. Not that I got to do. I get to do, right? I'm trying to be more grateful. So where do I see Frank's World in 20 years? That's a good question because, I mean, ultimately, Frank's World has been a reflection of what I was doing, right, in my career, right? It started off as a way I could teach myself web development. Because remember, at this point in time, in August and 1995, the summer of 1995, very few people were, one, well versed in web, and secondly, weren't paying for it. So it really became a hobby that I could kind of build out and learn my HTML skills and build out any HTML skills. So, and design skills as well, because it was kind of cool because it was really an artistic outlet. And I've said this a number of times that ultimately I wanted to be a graphic designer when I was going to go to college, but the parents were like, nope, doctor, lawyer, engineer, or join the military. Those were my three options. But all good options. But so the short of it is that it was a really good creative outlet. So when the opportunity came to switch into a web development role in 1996, to be the webmaster at Barnes and Noble, I already had a year of experience in web development. And I had fairly good numbers on franksworld.com, not the homepage. And this should have been my first, looking back, hindsight kind of being better than foresight, is that the Frank's World homepage itself was, never really got a lot of traffic. The subsites that I had, there was the help desk tales, horror tales in the help desk, which was also a reflection of what I was doing at the time. And the Schnauzer Space, right, is a site for dogs. Long story about that. Let me know in the comments if you want me to talk more about it. A site about a magazine. I launched a kind of an e-zine called Scrape Magazine. There was, what was the other one? There was a website about Bayonne, New Jersey. There was a website about another town in New Jersey I lived in. There was, what was the other one? The prank call site, which that came about as the magazine. Then the founder of that, because basically what was that was I kind of did this model where I would he would post his content to my site where I would not censor him or anything like that. And I also had access to real-time streaming audio, which at the time was, again, this is 10 years before YouTube. But the individual subsites had way more traffic than the homepage. And so that should have been my first clue, is that, maybe the brand Frank's World didn't really convey quite the message that I did, but Schnauzer Space, I mean, immediately that's about dogs, right? Schnauzers. And prank was it Art of Prank Calls, so you know what that is. Bayonne Information Network, you know exactly what that's about. So maybe I'm dense. Maybe it took me almost 20 years to learn that lesson, but I did learn it. But if you notice, I mean, just the branding here is much better. We have the About the Show, and this is definitely something that I've learned. To this day, I still take advantage of my the advanced let's see, does it? Computer rendering and kind of motion graphic skills I learned to do Frank's World. So it was it was definitely a learning experience, and this does dovetail nicely, not just kind of a look back, but also a look forward into Andy and I's secret project. Which we're not quite ready to reveal, but I think I'm going to take all the lessons I've learned from Data Driven, from the successes of franksworld.com, the blog, and the successes of the podcast, along with the abject failure of the YouTube channel, and then kind of combine all that. I'm dropping a lot of hints, but you'll see soon enough. Well, thank you, Alberto. I appreciate that. I am both a scientist and an artist. Well, thank you. I think in our weird education system that we have in the West, we've kind of isolate subjects. I think art is an important component of a good education, art appreciation, definitely. And just the ability to express yourself creatively. I think that's a core human need, whether that's through writing, whether that's through singing or music, or I don't know what. But thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. But I mean, ultimately, my YouTube channel is kind of been just a disaster. Almost from day one, right? The company I work for. Oh, thank you. Frank's world is honest and explainable science. Thank you. That's kind of my goal. And I think I've seen a resurgence in success because I do have a goal of Frank's world, right? If you look at the graphics now, right, it's not just I have a new logo for it. I need to update it. But I have to be in a certain mood to deal with WordPress. Don't hate me because I don't like WordPress. I think WordPress is WordPress is around because there's such an ecosystem around it, not because it's an awesome platform. Frank's world of data science and AI, right? So that kind of tells you what it is. And what this will look like in 20 years, I don't know. I mean, I certainly have some dreams and goals, and we'll see how that goes. But if you look at it right now, you know exactly what it's about. It's not just Frank's world. It's Frank's world of data science and AI. And the word "of" is not in that logo, so I need to fix that. The new one will have that. But ultimately, you know exactly what it is, and I do. I do really think that it is my mission. I know it sounds corny, but ever since I kind of had that aha moment at the Machine Learning and Data Science Summit, which is a super secret thing that the Microsoft Research throws, is I kind of had this vision of, I've seen the light. The future is data. Our economy is going to run around data and artificial intelligence. It's my mission to educate and teach as many people as possible, because as I was starting to skill up in it, there was so much elitism. It was frustrating, there was a time when people thought you couldn't do data science without a PhD. And I spoke to some of the speakers that were at this conference, like, hey, if I want to break into this field, what do? First guy takes a sip of his, Mountain Dew, and he's like, all right, just go back to school, get a PhD. Like, okay. Now, having then looked him up on he's very successful, by the way, a nice guy. I don't think he meant it that way. Was everybody in his circle? I don't want to say his schools or whatever, because you probably forgot who he is, but he's not that famous. But anyway, he's famous enough, and he was like, for him, he had 2 degrees from 2 prestigious universities, 2 PhDs, at least 1 master's that I'm aware of, and he's like, for him, getting a PhD is like when I go to 7-Eleven and I get a Dr. Pepper. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a big deal for him. And everyone in his circle has that too. Now, I did get a response from somebody else who she told me, she's very smart. She has a PhD. And she just said, you know what? Don't go back to school to get a PhD yet. She's like, just take some classes, take as much information as you can. If you like it, you will be ignited with such passion, the rest will follow. And she was right, so that kind of, that almost shut down my data science career, in its infancy, but because I got better advice. So that was kind of an aha moment for me to be that voice, that, not elitist voice. So I got a comment from John. John Wood's an awesome guy. He creates awesome YouTube videos. He's cracked the marketing code. John, I should talk to you. How about getting the algorithm figured out? He has a lot of great videos. You should definitely check him out. I showcase a lot of his stuff on Frank's World because he does a great job of explaining this in an honest and authentic way. So, John, you rock. Definitely want to get you on the live stream for sure. So, yes, I'm glad I'm not the only one that doesn't like WordPress. Because WordPress is not I'm going to botch this quote, but it's from one of the Batman movies, right? It's not the content management system we need. It's the content management system we deserve, right? I would love to get off WordPress, but the ecosystem on WordPress in terms of design and plugins is so huge, you really can't. In fact, I went into WordPress kicking and screaming like 4 or 5 years ago. I used something called Orchard, which was kind of a .NET content management system for blogs that didn't go anywhere. Before that, I was on something called .text, and which was from 2004. So, so many stories, but yeah. So your competitors are Sagan. Yes. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Just being mentioned in that thing, same thing. So it's funny, right? So I was talking about on an earlier live stream about Omni Magazine. Omni Magazine was great because it would talk about science. It was targeted towards armchair scientists, which that term alone kind of makes me think of somebody stuffy in a tweed suit sipping tea and like looking down at anyone who doesn't have multiple advanced degrees. Uh, but science doesn't have to be stuffy. Science doesn't have to be kind of reserved to the elitist, particularly now in the age of like the internet. I mean, if I wanted to learn, if I wanted to learn something, I could do that. Yeah, anything. I mean, whether it's building my own rail gun, which yes, that actually exists. People build their own rail guns. Building the solar generator in my backyard is the result of watching a lot of YouTube videos. Data science, right? I mean, a lot of that is I learned from YouTube videos, from Pluralsight, from LinkedIn Learning, from courses on edX. I mean, we are in a golden age of learning, only if you point your browsers in those directions, right? So many things are meant to distract us, and I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of thing. But I thank you for including me with Carl Sagan, because Carl Sagan, I mean, he would explain really complicated topics in just simple, approachable ways. And I remember watching it as a kid, just being fascinated by that. Omni Magazine was kind of in that same vein, although maybe not as elevated as Carl Sagan. So I think that there's a lot of great YouTubers out there that explain science and mathematical contents. They certainly have built a following. They've figured out the algorithm better than I. But I mean, this is not just what I want, what I do. I mean, this is my mission, to help people understand technology. So thank you, Alberto. And I think there's a huge opportunity to helping people understand quantum computing, which, by the way, I watched a really great lecture. It was on the Microsoft Research YouTube channel on quantum computing. And it was brilliant. It was, so I can pull it up, because it was the first, it was labeled quantum computing or quantum algorithms for computer scientists. Here we go. This is just about the most perfect video I have ever seen on. He explains this so well, in such a way that makes so much sense, particularly if you have a degree in computer science. Not after that whole rant on elitism. There's a lot of stuff you need to know to do. Where is it? Kind of at the core of how we, everything from kind of the left half of the screen here is something that you have to study to get a degree in computer science, right? It's kind of logic gates and operators and stuff like that. He showed you how to do it in quantum computing. So the things with the parentheses is how that's being done in how you would do that in a quantum system. And the way he explains it is really, really good. I remember watching it. I was watching it last night, which is kind of sad. But he explained it in a way that totally resonated with me. This unit circle state machine, this is something that he's like, if you study computers, you would have done this. And I'm like, did I? Oh yeah, I did. So just to put it into context, when I studied computer science, when I started studying computer science, Kurt Cobain was not yet famous. And obviously he was still alive. So, and Tupac was well alive too. In fact, I think when I first started studying computer science, Tupac was not a solo act. He was part of, I want to say, Digital Underground. And I remember, it's funny, like the stuff that you remember, right? So I remember the first time I heard Tupac was I was on Fordham Road in a music store. And yes, that's right, kids. You used to have to go to a physical store and buy music. And there was a video of him playing in the background. I think it was the song I Get Around. And like, it had a catchy beat. And I'm like, who is this guy? And then I think he might have done that. And there was a bunch of folks in that song who were also from Digital Underground. The Humpty Dance is probably their most famous song. Invite him to the podcast. I assume you don't mean Kurt Cobain or Tupac. Yeah, the guy from the Microsoft Research video. That's a brilliant idea. Thank you, Alberto. Alberto's the man. Him and Rupesh have this really awesome podcast. So yeah, in this video, he does talk about some of the potential applications for quantum computing. Mostly he talks about Shor's algorithm and nitrogen fixation, but he doesn't get too into it because he's really describing kind of the logic gates, how these work at that level, right? So if you took computer science, you would have been exposed to this. If you went to a kind of a boot camp where you're self-taught, you may not have been exposed to it. It's kind of just the fundamental stuff, right? That's kind of like, you know, the way people learn programming now is it's kind of like, yes, alive people only. Yes, that would be a different type of show if I were interviewing ghosts. But yeah, no. So this is the fundamentals, and if folks are interested in me kind of going through a class on this, if you're curious about this or talking about this, I'm happy to do it. It's a good exercise for my memory. But the whole point is kind of like how these things work at the basic core logic level. We really don't teach that anymore in terms of the, obviously you have to teach Boolean logic and all that sort of stuff, but the kind of the core, how the electrons actually flow in that chip is not really taught unless you go to pursue kind of the more academic computer sciencey type point of view, which, I mean, at the time when I studied, that was all you had. But it's not rocket science, right? It's basically kind of these logic gates and stuff like that. You can probably find 100 different YouTube videos on how it works. But what's great about this is just how he explains it. And there's this one part where he talks about kind of how these gates work, even how teleportation works. I didn't get to that point. I'm only at about 46, 50 minutes or so in, but he does talk about some of the problems that quantum can solve. Actually, that's on my list today. In addition to writing back to Mr. Sunjo, thank you for your patience. I was going to finish this video. I also have some other kind of stuff related to that secret project that we're doing. Cool. Computer science is your hobby, or quantum physics or quantum computing? I mean, let me tell you, I mean, this video is a couple of years old. I think it's from, maybe I have to zoom too out. It won't tell me. Yeah, it's from almost 3 years ago. And, he said, we're expecting quantum supremacy this year. He explains all that is. And I have a podcast called Impact Quantum, where I do go into that in some detail. I really do need to record another episode of Impact Quantum. The part of the reason why I haven't is because up until the last couple of days, I really kind of hit my comfort level or my knowledge boundary of what I understood, so if you're an expert in quantum computing, you want to be on a podcast, call me. I'm pretty easy to find. Put my new Twitter up. But your best place to find me is on LinkedIn. There's definitely a change coming. And but yeah, I think this is really great. Both. That's the best answer. Why not both? Yeah, with that, I want to thank you for watching. It is Sunday, and I'm going to hang out with the family and the kids. But yeah, so thanks, John. Thanks, Alberto. Thanks, Nasai. I will get back to you. But there's definitely, this is just an exciting time to be alive. Viruses, pandemics, and all this sort of thing notwithstanding, this really is a good time to be alive. In terms of just, if you want to learn something, you want to build something. I think yesterday or the day before I talked about, X as a service, right? This really great, training video on LinkedIn Learning, right? Where just the sheer possibilities that somebody with a laptop and an internet connection can one, learn, two, build, and three, enrich themselves. And I mean, it's unprecedented in human history. So, I mean, stop scrolling on Instagram, stop scrolling on Facebook, digging through Facebook drama, right? The future is in your head. So you got to take care of this head. And one of the things I like to say is that regardless of what you believe spiritually, what happens to you after you're dead, who knows? But one thing I think everyone can agree on is that you're stuck with yourself for the rest of your life. So that leaves you with this choice of Do you want to be better? To improve yourself, or do you not want to? I mean, that's, do you want to? And there's want, and then there's many. It's a bit quantum, right? Right, Alberta. It's yeah. So I'm gonna keep this stream mostly technical, not veer too much off into self-improvement. But just want to thank you for watching. And here's one of the skills that I learned from doing YouTube and learning After Effects and Premiere is the ability to create really cool 3D graphics. So yesterday when I ran it, it didn't work on the stream. It showed on my phone, but it didn't show there. And then there was this little alert saying that the version of Chrome I was running didn't work. So if you can see it, that's awesome. If you don't see it, then sorry about that. Call Restream and tell them to fix their quality issues. Anyway, not just lie lovely, Restream. I'm just giving you a hard time. So with that, thank you for watching. Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you, Nasai. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. My last name gets butchered all the time, so I'm kind of hypersensitive about butchering other people's names. You have a great day, and hopefully I'll be back on a live stream tomorrow.